Good morning. I think we can start. My name is Nguwi. I'm an occupational psychologist. I'm also the managing consultant for industrial psychology consultants. This session is really to help people in terms of how they can look for jobs, especially around job hunting tips, interview questions, dealing with the interview itself, and also preparing your CV. This is not going to be a presentation. It's actually a question and answer session. I've done presentations before, but I thought this should be focusing on people who have got specific questions about this particular area that we are looking at. So I will open up this session for discussion. Now, if you want, you can just raise up your hand and we take your question. We allow you to give your question. Alternatively, you can put your question in the chat room and I will be able to read the question out. You can also send me the question privately if you don't want to be identified. It's all perfectly fine. So that's the process that we're going to be following. We are not going to do introductions in this particular one. If maybe we can start. If there's anyone who can, maybe let me give you a brief overview of the job market currently in this country. Yeah, if you look at the Zimbabwean market, what was surprising, especially in 2020, is that the Q4 2020, we saw a lot of organizations hiring. It's still the same trend in this quarter. A few organizations are hiring. What we are not sure of is that whether this hiring trend that we are noticing is a result of replacement or it's new opportunities as a result of growth of business, which we doubt in most cases. It could just be people moving from one organization to the other. We have also noted that companies that are paying in US dollars tend to have an upper edge in terms of attracting people to their organization. So we are seeing people who are moving for an extra dollar, moving to another organization for an extra dollar because the people value more the US dollar currency. We are also noticing that companies that are offering things like school fees, company car, in some cases loans, also tend to get people to get better talent than those that cannot afford those things. That's basically what is happening on the market. So I'll take questions if you've got any questions. So far, we are not many of us, so maybe it's better to just unmute yourself and speak. And once you identify yourself, your name, then once you identify yourself, we can then proceed to answer your question. Yes, we'll talk. Mkono.
Thank you, Memory. I've noticed in most job adverts where companies would be looking at filling up positions, say for director level positions. You notice that in most cases, they say they are looking for a finance director, marketing director. You notice that they would say with we want a finance director with so many years of experience, right? My worry is we have got people who are at some middle to senior level positions in their organizations, but not the director level, who will be looking forward to say that leap into director level positions. I don't know how this would actually work, where every company that's looking for a director is saying we want someone with experience as a director again. How does someone who is merely say a finance manager then become a finance director in an organization outside the current?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, thank you very much. Let me start by saying that those companies that specifically say we want someone at a director level, it's actually a very odd practice, but common, largely out of ignorance in terms of how a job profile should be done. Normally, what would be required to say 5 years at managerial or executive level. That's what normally happens. Because the classification of whether someone is managerial is executive depends with the company. You can have someone with the title manager, a finance manager, but they're actually a very senior executive. You can have someone with the title director, but actually they're handling less issues than someone who is a manager. So what we normally is what we recommend is to just say 10 years, if it's 10 years experience, you say 10 years experience, 5 of which must be at a senior managerial level, which could be the person shortlisting should be able to do that. But you are right. We have noted that sometimes people then tend to go for people who have got experience at that same level. I have written about it before. For example, if you look at CEOs, the challenge that we have that is that you find that it's basically recycling the same people in the market because of the way the adverts are written. So it is a problem. I will also raise this same problem with my colleagues in some of our groups and also post it on Twitter so that we can generate a discussion around that. But you're right, that observation is right, but it's largely out of ignorance. In some cases, those job descriptions were done long back and no one looked at them. So if someone is not experienced and does not understand what is happening on the market, they are very likely to just send that job description as it is without necessarily looking at those issues. But a valid point that I have taken note of. Okay.
Thank you.
Let's have next question. So anyone with another question? Remember, this is a question and answer session. I'm not going to present anything.
Hi, Memory.
How are you, Innocent?
Good. And how is everyone? I just wanted, I'm not looking for a job, but I would want to know what the market is like for people in the diaspora who would like to come back. Mm-hmm. What is the appetite like? Is there, like attitudes towards people that are coming back and negative attitudes, or what is your sense?
Okay, currently there is no negative attitude, but what I suspect could be a challenge for diasporans is just being able to fit into the cultures that have developed in some of the organizations. Just to give you an example, because of the hard economic environment, you find that certain things that you expect to be normal and done properly in an organization may actually not be done properly. So this kind of kia culture is very prevalent, even at very senior level. So if you're coming from the diaspora and executive, you come and join such kind of an organization, you may find it very difficult to be able to assimilate, to be assimilated in that kind of culture. But in terms of, we have asked even this question on Twitter, we have not seen any negative sentiment besides people obviously saying, I know the diasporans may not cope with the kind of situation, or they are not suited to this kind of environment, because they are suited to a situation where people are already, where systems are working. In this country, you may find that systems are actually not working. So you have to put those systems in place. We are facing many challenges, some are outside your control. That's challenge number one. But we've also seen that for those that are those that want to go into mining, in a mining environment, it's much easier to go into those, because mining companies generally have been getting people from assisted, and I also do know that there are mining companies that are taking people from the diaspora. In the mining sector, it's actually very prevalent, but some of the skills had gone outside the company. So there is no negative feeling. The third part is it will be really an issue of remuneration. The salaries are relatively low, especially for those companies that are outside the exporting group, which is a tobacco, mining, and some of the agriculture, horticulture kind of organizations and NGOs. So if you are in manufacturing, if you are not exporting 60% of your product, very unlikely that you'll be able to be paid in full US dollars. So those are some of the challenges that you are likely to face. And obviously the infrastructure generally will be a constraint to someone coming from the diaspora. We expect to move from 1 kilometer from Arcturus Road to just go into Samora Machel, but you may find a lot of potholes and all the other obstacles that we find. The good thing now is that fuel is readily available, which was a major constraint in terms of doing any business. Electricity fairly stable currently. Then we do, so the major constraints, I would say, salaries and just be able to cope with what I would call an abnormal environment. But if someone is willing to do that, they can easily be absorbed, especially if they target the cream of the organization, cream in terms of ability to pay. Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Another question?
Thank you, Memory and Tim.
Thank you.
Yes, I've got 3 questions. The first one is that I wanted to check what are the key skills that are being looked at for HR managers in this dispensation, where they're talking about the new world of work and all. What could set someone apart from the lot in terms of upskilling? The second issue is on follow-up after interviews. If you are promised that we'll get back to you and then they don't get back to you, how do you really lay to them without necessarily annoying the recruiter? Then the last thing is on psychometrics. If you do psychometrics, is there any room that, especially through IPC, that I could also get my results and maybe try and see how best can I improve on certain issues that have been picked up by the psychos? Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much. So let me start with the key skills that people are looking at. These tend to vary. One of the things that is a silent consideration for most employers, which most job seekers are not aware of, is that employers generally would prefer to employ someone coming from who have worked for good brands. Okay, that is a given across the board. Okay, if you're coming from an international organization, from a multinational, from a well-run organization, chances of you getting a job those chances are actually very high if you're in that kind of a situation. So it's not necessarily a matter of skill. Sometimes it's just a matter of your career profile. Does it include having you worked for some of those top? I remember when I during our time long back, things were not as bad as they are now in terms of job scarcity. But what I did is I said to myself, okay, I want to work for some of the top brands so that I lay the ground. I worked for Barclays. After Barclays, I worked for BHP, which is now Zimplats. After that, I worked for Ernst & Young. So with that kind of profile, whenever I would apply, I would be called for the interview. And most of the time, I would actually then reject the offer if it's not good. You can see that kind of pattern. There is no one who has got that kind of profile who failed to be called for the interview. Even sometimes when they don't meet all the requirements, they still get called. I would consider that to be core. So the strategy then, if you think you've worked for some of the bad brands, don't spotlight them in your CV, those bad brands that you've worked for. There's one youngster that I was assisting recently, where I noted they said that they've never been called for interview. They've done hundreds of applications, never been called for interview. But I then picked that they had worked for a state entity that had a bad reputation in the market. So whether you were involved or not, people would look at that and say, this one is bad apple, out. It's shortlisting. If seconds, they don't even take minutes. They don't even think twice. So, but in terms of the actual skills, some of the things that you can look at is obviously people who are digitally savvy have an upper end. When you go for an interview, you must show you're digitally savvy. You can do presentations. You know, just to give you an example, since COVID, I have interviewed probably close to about 500 people now, for various clients, job interviews. Some struggle to even meet themselves. Some struggle to put the mic on. Basic things to do with Zoom, for example. Someone struggled. Then some people start saying, when that person is going to say, with this kind of person, I don't think we will get anywhere. They struggle to even to use Zoom, okay? And you say, can you share your presentation? They struggle. Those are some of the things that people, employers are concerned. A digitally savvy job seeker is much better than someone who is not. Then the general critical thinking, which was critical thinking, what it speaks to is the ability to interrogate, to look at issues beyond what you are given, okay? Start questioning things, start looking for evidence. You don't just come, even I use this a lot when I'm interviewing people. If someone is answering a question, they should avoid sweeping statements as if they've got the evidence. If you are not sure, it's better to use probably, most likely, those are the words that shows that someone is conscious, what is called metacognition, thinking about thinking. your own thinking, basically. You're looking at yourself and say, what I'm saying, is it making sense? If I'm claiming to something, is there evidence for it? Okay, that kind of thinking is what people are missing across the board, even in general interaction with a lot of people. I see even on Twitter, if you go, even very people that we consider to be professional, they're throwing out statements without putting a rider that says, no, this is my opinion. Is this your opinion, or is this supported by scientific evidence? Then follow-ups, this one is a big problem. Especially in Zimbabwe, naturally people have gone into this mode that there are too many people looking for jobs. If you don't hear from us, presume that you have not been successful. That's basically the theme that is underlying. I would not waste my time at this stage, especially in Zimbabwe, to follow up. If they need you, they will call you. There's no way an employer will change their mind simply because they followed up. While it leaves you anxious, it's the normal thing now. That's what is happening now. So you may have to live with that in the present circumstances. So that is what is happening. Then on psychometric tests, just to help people, how psychometric tests are interpreted so that you understand. Let's say you're an accountant, you come and write psychometric tests. You basically write psychometric tests under various categories. The first one is what we call general mental ability, because that's the biggest predictor of performance across all jobs. So that's your verbal reasoning, numerical and abstract reasoning. That is standard. Then you go to your critical thinking. You go to, if you are mechanical, we give you mechanical reasoning test, spatial ability test. We do your personality and things like that. What is key in understanding psychometric tests is that we are recruiting an accountant and we test 10 people. Those 10 people, we don't look at their raw score. For example, you can get 40 on verbal reasoning, which is really not the ability to speak English, but the logic in what you write and say. So you get 30 out of 40. Ordinarily, that person is passed. If you look at it, that score in isolation. But we don't interpret tests like that. We then say, okay, Juliet got 30 out of 40 for this test. How is Juliet performing when we compare him here to other accountants? We find, Juliet is actually the bottom of those accountants. If we rank all the core scores from the accountants, it's at the bottom. Most accountants are averaging 38 out of 40. That's how psychometric tests are interpreted. So you can be good, but still fail a psychometric test simply because you are being compared to a norm group. I can take that same score that you wrote as an accountant and say, you now want to be an FD. I then take that score and compare you to FDs. Okay, you may find that your ranking moves depending. So psychometric tests are not interpreted in isolation; they're interpreted in line with a particular role. Then, in terms of feedback, it's actually a requirement in terms of our practice that we give feedback, but it also depends on time. You can imagine the number of people that we test. But if you request feedback via email, I actually sit down with each individual, an average of about 10-15 minutes, explaining the results, areas that they can work on. All those I actually do. I do feedback sessions almost every day. Okay, hopefully I've answered your question.
Thank you so much.
Okay, any other question?
Well, if no one else has a question, I can ask a question.
Thank you.
And it's in relation to people that are over 50. Mm-hmm. What is the market for seniors like? Do they stand a chance? Is there demand for their skills?
Yeah, but yeah, for that level, especially for the people going into executive levels, over 50 is not an issue. But where I have noticed concerns is when people are now around 61. Yeah, you start seeing people saying, but this person is already close to retirement. Why should we waste time on them? Which ordinarily should not be the case, because you can get someone who comes for 2 years and give you immense value. But obviously, people don't do that all the time. So I would affirmatively say that based on my own experience, there is no negative feelings, but I've seen those for people that are above 60. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Oh, that's very useful.
Thank you.
Yes.
Okay, here is the question. The first question is, how authentic are these recruitment companies? Because times you could see that one particular post is advertised by close to 12 companies, and the email addresses are the ones that are used by recruitment companies. So how authentic and how reliable are they? Are they not only wanting to have a pool of candidates for their own benefits? Right, that is the first question. And then the second question, follow up on Mr. Magama's question here. I hope it's Mr. Magama. Right, for the psychometric test, I wrote a psychometric test for one particular company of which you're a board member, right? And they never gave me feedback. Now, when you're calling, if you would then call the company, you would be afraid to say that they would say that you're conversing with them, but simply you would want feedback. Did I pass or did I not? So I then called the company, then they said, that post has been put on hold. And then 3 weeks later, they then re-advertise the post. So I think it's far much better if they communicate with the applicants that we have done this and we have done this, etc. Thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much. Let me start with the feedback. If you have done psychometric tests in terms of the regulation that we have in psychological practice regulations, you need to get feedback, but the timing is important. Normally, the psychologist can't give you feedback until the client is concluded. Otherwise, they will jump the gun. So they wait until the client is concluded, then they can give you feedback. You can actually still request for feedback. If you don't get any joy, you can actually report the company to Allied Health Professions Council, and it will be attended to for the psychologists. So, but but going to your other question, authentic, and in organization, there's a lot of politics as well, a lot of reasons why certain jobs are advertised. In some cases, the job can be advertised when there's already internal candidates that have been promised the job, for example. These are all things that can happen. But if you look at state entities for now, majority of them, the law requires them to advertise. So there's no one who can be clandestinely just be given, unless the person, the panel then that interviews is biased, which can happen. But nowadays, for most state entities, you can't just directly appoint someone and say, you are now the finance manager, you are now the finance director, or you are now the operations director. You can't. Although there are some people flouting those rules. But there are also other people, for example, I do know that there are employment agencies that will advertise for a job in order to just get CVs when there's actually no job. So those are possibilities. And also, as you are looking for this job, you must be able to categorize and say, for these ones, I don't apply. Just like me, as a consultant, there are certain organizations where even if they send me 10 requests for proposals, I don't respond. Because I know the system is faulty, so I'm wasting my time. Because preparing a proposal takes time. Sometimes you can spend 5 to 10 days preparing a proposal where you know they already have someone, so I don't waste my time. So you could use the same strategies. But it's a reality. Organizations do have politics. It's a reality. Sometimes jobs are advertised either by agents or the organization just to see who is on the market and what quality is on the market. All those they will never disclose to you. Thank you. Any other question?
Okay, so is there any way, right, is there any way that you can distinguish that this job, let me apply for this job and this one, it's a no? Is there any way that you can distinguish between the two?
Most of the time, I would avoid the jobs that are where someone doesn't want their identity to be given. It could be an indication of transparency, or there is already someone that they want to fire in their own organization. You can imagine the job is being advertised, but there's already someone in that role where they're trying to find a way of dealing with them. So that's one rule that I used to use. Not sure whether it's still working or not. To say if the company can't identify themselves in their advert, I will not apply for that job. Yeah. Any other question?
Maybe then I could ask, would you advise a job seeker to apply directly or to focus on registering with employment agencies when they are out on the market looking for a job? What would be the advantage and disadvantage of each method?
Yeah, the advantage of registering with the employment agencies is that jobs, yes, they don't, because one of the things that I can almost tell you now is for certain roles, the competition is just too high. If I advertise for an accountant now, I could get, in the next 2 hours, I could get close to about 500 CVs for an accountant job, including qualified and not those not qualified. So recruitment agencies rarely go through all the 500. They will look for the outstanding ones, okay? And also the issue of timing is important. If I advertise a job now and you apply after 5 days, even if the closing date is not stated or said 2 weeks, the employment agency is likely to take the first come on a first come basis, based on quality, obvious. Because they remember employment agents are paid on the quality, on their candidate being hired. So they look for the best candidate, whoever they consider the best candidate at that particular time. But I would say that the majority of the CVs that we find, especially when looking at us, they are poorly done. It's almost atrocious the way some of the CVs are done, especially as you go up the ladder. And on that basis alone, sometimes just say, there's no way I can redo this CV for someone. They're not serious. Let me just leave them. Okay? Because I can't even send the CV to the client. Spelling errors, the formatting is bad, and all those things. We do consider all those things as we are hiring people. So those are some of the issues that you can. But if a company advertises a job, you actually have got a better chance of being shortlisted if it's direct to the company rather than an agency. Yeah, because the agencies have got their own criteria over and above what is listed there. How long has the person applied? How quick the person applies. And sometimes you could apply for a job. Let's say I've got accountants and I already had shortlisted accountants for another organization B. Then another client says, advertise for this, I advertise. It's very likely that I will pick from my best candidates that were not employed in the last client, rather than waiting for the 500 CVs. So those are some of the dynamics that we find with employment agents. We are lucky if the company advertises on its own. Very likely, if you qualify, they will shortlist you, because of certain conditions as well. In some companies, especially state entities now, as long as the person must be shortlisted, basically, then they must be eliminated as you go. So you've got a higher chance of getting the job.
Yeah. Thank you. Very useful.
Okay. Any other question? Okay. Let me just give another 2 minutes. If there are no questions, which means we're done. And if you follow me on Twitter, you can also suggest any other areas that you may want us to address, either through responses on Twitter or through a session like this. When I present, people don't want to question in another session. When I do presentations, you get 40, 50 people registering. Yes, yeah, so they don't want to really ask questions. They just want information. That's what I'm saying. But also a smaller group, you tend to attend to their concerns better than having a bigger group. Okay, otherwise, thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of your day. Let's keep following each other. If you follow me on Twitter now, if you are not following me, I'll follow you back. Then let's dialogue, and also feel free to come to my DM. Then I'll definitely make sure that I respond.
Thank you so much, Memory and team. Thanks, everyone.
Okay,
Thank you so much.
Bye.
Yes, thank you.